done in that post-closing process. So we are so we have completed the process at this point. I think I wanted to go back because I didn't talk a lot about the title commitment, and I think that's something that is important that we do. So I'm backing up a little bit on the slides. The title company does a search of the public records to see if there are any liens against the property. And from that search, we produce a title commitment that goes out to the real estate agents and the buyer and the seller. The buyer should be looking at that title commitment to make sure that their name is spelled correctly in the way they want it to appear on the deed and the manner in which they want to hold title. If it's a husband and wife, that's usually on there, and that means that they're holding that property jointly, and if something happens to one, the other owns the property. But sometimes we have occasions where multiple people are buying the property, and in that case we need to understand how they want to hold it, whether so that if something happens to one of the parties, what happens with their share of that property. So that's a discussion that you need to have up front with the title company as to how you want to hold title. The other thing is then on the next section of the title commitment, it says the requirements, and that will tell you if there are liens on the property, if there are mortgages that need to be paid off, if there has been a foreclosure action begun on this property, if the homeowners' dues are delinquent and they filed a lien, it will be there. If they have any federal tax liens, all of that will be on the property, and all those things need to be cleared in order to close. And by clear, I mean that for example, on the homeowners, if there's a lien on the homeowners, we contact the attorney for the homeowners association that filed the lien to determine the amount of funds that need to be collected in order to close. And they sign a statement, give us a statement of what needs to be collected, and once they receive that, they'll release the lien. That will take care of that requirement. Once we close and have the funds and send it to them, they will release the lien, and that's one of the things that we follow up to make sure happen once everything is closed. But again, the title commitment is important for both the buyer and the seller to understand what activities need to occur and prior to closing and in order for us to close. The other thing I want to talk briefly to again on the inspections, we're finding more and more that issues are coming up at the last minute. Inspections, there's a timeline in the contract that should be followed. Your real estate agent is a key person to work with you on that, to be able to make sure that everything is happening in the time that it should. There's a time in which to apply for a loan. There's a time in which to get the title search completed. There's a time to get the survey done. There's a time to get inspections done. There's a time to get the repairs completed. Those are all key elements in that contract, a timeline that you need to work with and work with your real estate agent to make sure that those are met so that we can close on time. All in all, closings seem to be taking a little longer. Lenders are taking longer to approve the mortgages and to get the documents and everything out to us. The short sale process is adding some time. Once we have a contract and have approval, many of the short sale lenders are requiring a copy of the final settlement statement 48 hours, 72 hours prior to closing to be able to approve it, and those approvals need to be in place before we can actually close. So those are some of the things that are kind of delaying or added steps that are occurring in this whole getting to closing in the current environment. Other thing, even on the foreclosed properties, you're dealing sometimes with lenders, with REO offices, with sometimes with their attorneys, and things take longer because to get things signed and settled, it takes much longer. because you're usually having to send documents away, and they're having to get an executive in that company to sign documents who's not always as readily available as someone else might be. So that's all adding into the time that it takes to get to the closing process. So I think that's about all I have. I want to talk a little bit about title insurance. People sometimes, as a title agent, they ask me why that's important, and especially today, it is very important. It's just like you have your insurance for your hazard insurance for the property or flood insurance. The title insurance is insurance of a clear title, so that when that gets transferred to you as the buyer, you know that the search has been done properly, that all of the activities have occurred to take care of making sure that that you have a clear title to that property. If there in the future something occurs that had happened in the past that wasn't reflected or not caught by the title agent, then that's why you have title insurance, is to go back to them to get those things corrected. And so it's very important, especially with the foreclosures that are happening today, the short sales. I know a lot of people, there's been a lot in the news lately related to some companies even stopping foreclosures because all the right paperwork hasn't been done, and that includes changing the title. If one bank sold this loan to another person, there needs to be certain documentation and file that shows that those transactions occurred. And if they have not been filed, then the person who thinks they own that property as far as the mortgage may not be until that paperwork is done. And so there's a lot of things that have kind of been going on. So your title company is your friend in this, because they're the ones who need to make sure that that search is done and that those things have occurred properly. It could delay your closing if they haven't been done properly until that actions, those steps have been taken, because they're showing, the public record shows someone else is the mortgage holder on the property, and so that all needs to be cleared up. It's key, if you can, to make sure that you have an independent title person who is looking at this, and not someone who's associated with the bank or with someone who has a vested interest in this. So so that would be my recommendation, is to make sure that you look closely at who the title company is. The other thing is that I would recommend that you use an attorney if you are concerned about anything, that they can usually for a small fee can review documents for you. If you have some concerns about something, they can help you with that. The other thing is that once we get to the conclusion and we've turned over the keys and to the property and everything's ready to go, make sure that the utilities get changed and carried over. Keep all of the documents in case you need them. Some things you may need for income taxes, both the buyer and the seller. Also, some of the copy of the deed is usually required when you do a homestead exemption. If that's something you that you qualify for, and that would certainly be something that you should look into. And keep a copy of the title policy once you receive it from the buyers for the future, in case, heaven forbid, that there should be an issue, or if you refinance, it gives you a discount on the title insurance. And also, if you resell the property within 3 years, there's also a reissue credit on the title insurance. So it can save you some money in the long run as well. That's all I have for today. And I think we're opening it now for any questions.
Yes, if you have a question, there's a box on your screen and you can type in a question and we'll be happy to address it. We have a question about reviewing the documents in advance, and I think you touched on that, Holly, but you might just want to talk about that.
Yes. Depending on your experience and how many closings you've been involved in and the particulars around it, some people like to get a copy of the documents in advance to review. Sometimes it gets very tight to meet the closing date and how soon documents are available. But as I said, even if you don't have a chance to review them prior to coming to closing, the closing is your opportunity to review everything before you you complete and sign anything. Most title agents should be able to send you ahead of time or let you come to their office if that's more convenient and sit down and review any loan documents and the settlement statement prior to the closing, and then so that at the closing you're very comfortable with everything. So you do have the opportunity to look at and review things in advance, and you can say, until I have time to review these, I'm not going to sign them, and push things back. So everyone you should not sign without feeling comfortable that you're aware of what it is that you're signing.
Thank you, Holly. I don't think we have any other questions this morning, and great presentation, and I hope you guys will join us for future webinars.